to the place called Disconnected Place. Judas is the children's estimated place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. Jesus was still speaking when Judas, one of the 12 disciples, arrived. Both men were a large crowd, armed with swords and clubs, and sent by the chief priests and the elders. The traitor had joined the crowd in prison.
What are you looking for?
Jesus the Nazarene.
They turned away and fell to the ground. So he asked them again,
What are you looking for?
Jesus the Nazarene.
I told you that I am he. Found the one you're looking for, let me down the door.
this was to fulfill the words he had spoken. Judas, one of the 12, went up to Jesus and said,
Peace be with you.
and kissed him.
Judas, you betrayed me right here.
Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Jesus said to Peter,
Put the sword back in its scabbard, and not use any touch while I forgive you.
the Great Heart and its tribunes, and the Jewish guards seized Jesus and bound him. They took him first to Annas. But Annas was the brother-in-law of Paso, who was the high priest that year. It was Paso to counsel the Jews.
It is better for one man to die for the people.
Simon Peter, with another disciple, followed Jesus. This disciple, who was known to the high priest, went with Jesus into the high priest's palace. But Peter stayed outside the door. So the other disciple, the one known to the high priest, went out, spoke to the doorkeeper, and brought Peter in. The girl on duty at the door said to Peter,
Aren't you another one of that man's disciples?
He answered,
I am not.
Now it was cold, and the servants and guards had lit a charcoal fire, and were standing there warming themselves. So Peter stood there too, warming himself with the others. The high priest questioned Jesus about his teachings. Jesus answered,
I have always taught in the synagogue and where the Jews meet together. I've said nothing in secret. Why ask me?
At these words, one of the guards standing by gave Jesus a slap in the face, saying,
Point it out. But
Texas, the high priest, as Simon Peter stood there warming himself, someone said to him,
Aren't you another of his disciples?
He denied it, saying, Again Peter denied it, and at once a cock crowed. Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the praetorium themselves, to avoid becoming defiled and unable to eat the Passover. So Pilate came outside to them and said,
What charge do you bring against this man?
They replied,
If he were not a criminal, we should not have handed him over to you.
Pilate said,
Take him yourself and try him by your own law. We are not allowed to put this man to death.
This was to fulfill the words Jesus had spoken, indicating the way he was going to die. So Pilate went back into the praetorium and called Jesus to him and asked,
Are you the king of the Jews?
And Jesus replied,
do you ask this of your own accord, or have others said it to you about me?
Pilate answered,
Am I a Jew? It is your own people and the chief priests who have handed you over to me. What have you done?
Jesus replied,
I am not the guilty one. That's why the one who handed over to you, me to you, is the one with the greater guilt.
Pilate said,
So then, you are the king.
Jesus,
The one who says that I am the king. I am not.
but greatly to Pilate's surprise, Jesus made no further response. Now on the occasion of a festival, he would release for them one prisoner, any man they asked for. There was a prisoner named Barabbas, jailed along with the rebels who had committed murder in the uprising. When the crowd came up to the press their demand that he honor the custom, Pilate on saying to the Jews,
I find no case against him. But according to a custom of yours, I should release one man at the Passover. Will you like me then to release for you the king of the Jews?
He was aware, of course, that it was out of jealousy that the chief priests had handed him over. Meanwhile, the chief priests incited the crowd to have him release Barabbas instead. At this, they shouted,
Not this man, but Barabbas!
Pilate said.
What am I to do with the man you call the king?
They shouted back.
Crucify him!
Pilate protested.
Take him yourselves and crucify him. I find no case against him.
They only shouted the louder.
Crucify him!
We have a law, and according to that law, he had to be put to death because he claimed to be the Son of God.
When Pilate heard them say this, his fears increased. Re-entering the praetorium, he said to Jesus,
Where do you come from?
but Jesus made no answer.
Are you refusing to speak to me? You know that I have the power to release you, and I have the power to crucify you.
You would not have any power at all if it had not been given to you from above.
From that moment, Pilate was anxious to set him free, but the Jews shouted,
If you set him free, you are no friend of Caesar's. Anyone who makes himself king is defying Caesar.
Hearing these words, Pilate had Jesus brought out and seated him on the chair of judgment at a place called the Pavement, in Hebrew Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation, about the 6th hour.
Here is your king.
The Jews shouted,
Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!
Shall I crucify you, king?
The high priest answered.
We have no king except for Caesar.
So Pilate, who wished to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas to them. After he had Jesus scourged, he handed him over to be crucified.
A king needs a crown. A king needs a robe.
They dressed him in a royal purple, and then wove a crown of thorns,
And put it on him, and began to salute him.
Hail the King of the Jews!
Inspires him. There's Mary's maternal heart to see her beloved son suffering, coming from the country to take up his cross, because Jesus was unable to go on. He took the veil, wiped his face, and left imprinted on the cloth, He fell upon the ground again. There was following Jesus a great man said,
Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children.
Jesus arriving, exhausted at the foot of God. His weakness was extreme, and cruelty of his executioners was excessive. The soldiers tore his clothes from his bleeding body, leaving him exposed to the cold, rude stare of the scoffing crowd. Jesus lies down upon his cross, and he extends his arms to offer up the sacrifice of his life for our salvation. The soldiers nail him hands and feet to his gibbets.
Oh! 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 Oh!
They then raised him. There were two others crucified, one on either side, with Jesus in the middle. Pilate also had an inscription written and put on the cross to Pilate.
You should not have written, the King of the Jews, but what he said, I am the King of the Jews. But I have written!
Jesus was crucified, and there were two criminals, one on his right and the other on his left. Jesus said,
Forgive them, Father, for they do not know what they are doing.
when the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his clothes and divided.
Save yourself, and us.
You're the one, however, rebuked him, saying,
Don't you fear God? You receive the same sentence as he did. Ours, however, is only right, because we are getting what we deserve for what we did. He has done no wrong.
and he said to Jesus,
Remember me, Jesus, when you come as king.
Jesus said to him,
I promise you that today you will be in paradise with me.
Standing by the cross of Jesus was his mother and his mother's sister Mary.
Dear mother,
And from that hour John took her into his home. After this, aware that everything was now finished, in order that the scripture might be fulfilled, Jesus said,
Father, I commend my spirit into your hands.
There was a vessel filled with common wine. They put the sponge soaked in wine on a sponge of hyssop and put it up to his mouth. At noon darkness came over the whole land until
That's it. Father, I commend my spirit into your hands.
some of the bystanders who heard it said,
Look, he is calling Elijah.